Alright, so I know it's a little late, but I'm going to be reviewing X-Men Uncanny, Uncanny X-Men 526. Apparently I can't talk today. So it's got a Mac Fraction and Will Portaccio on the main story with a backup story by Alan Heinberg and Olivia Coipel. So let's pop into it. First thing I like is story starts right away. So that's pretty sweet. You've got the person in the first light, this Lori girl in Vancouver, BC, unknown first light, and so you kind of can see her kind of falling into her mutant puberty. Should we call it that? So something also I kind of like is how they have Iceman and Angel patrolling. I feel like there's been a shortage of Iceman lately, and I'm kind of not stoked on that because he's one of my favorites, and it's always nice when they bring it back to the original five, and I'm kind of a fan of that. Next up, we have something else also I wanted to mention I really like about this book is there's a lot of different like stories going on, and so first story is First Light Breakout, or break, yeah, with Angel and Iceman at the start, and then second story kind of is Hope kind of going to Alaska to meet her family, which she kind of started talking about in Uncanny X-Men Heroic Age, the one-shot. So she does that, and she has like this huge bag with her, and then kind of Cyclops tells her, look, you know, it's civilized, they have internet, coffee shops, stuff like that. I thought that was kind of a nice little thing, and kind of Hope kind of talks about where she's from, they don't have that, and she has a pack and surviving to last, and surviving just on bare essentials. And so she's kind of like, oh, maybe I overpacked, and tosses the bag. And also something she says is, she doesn't say, she kind of corrects herself and says when I'm from, not where I'm from. Which I thought was great, because Hope's never had an actual home. She's always kind of been bouncing around through the time stream. And then here we got to look at the different stories going on. You have the X-Jet, which I didn't understand because I thought, didn't Donald Pierce destroy them in Second Coming? Maybe that's something I missed in the one shot. But anyways, you have Hope, Rogue, Cypher, and Dr. Nemesis going to Alaska to find her family. You have Emma, which there's this backstory, or this story with her that we'll talk about in a second. And then you have Wolverine in Japan, setting up for the Second Light. So that's kind of cool. I feel like this is kind of like Chris Claremont back in the day, who'd kind of plant little seeds throughout his books, and then they would come to fruition later in the story. So I feel like that's kind of something I'm excited for in here. And then here we get the setup for Emma's story, where she's going to meet Tony Stark, possibly a Hellfire Club event, which they're both members of in the past. And then I know there's supposed to be some Sebastian Stan stuff later in the arc, so we'll see about that. Something I didn't really like was when they get into Alaska, I was okay with it, but not my biggest fan of how they get in Alaska, and Cypher talks about Hope and her family, but he's kind of robotic about it. Maybe it's just Cypher as a person, but I thought there'd be like a little more emotion there, but I think that's just his personality. I also kind of wasn't so sure about Hope's grandmother, Mrs. Spaulding, I think was her name. I'm still kind of hoping for the whole gene connection, and hopefully there's some sort of strange relation there, but I think it's going to, hopefully I'm kind of hoping that's going to be coming up, but I'm not quite sure yet. Next thing I'm kind of not so sure about, but I'm kind of liking as well, because they're finally addressing, because it wasn't addressed at all in Second Coming, Kitty Pryde. What the heck's going on with Kitty Pryde? And so there's Colossus talking to Dr. Rao, and kind of talking to her about her condition, and saying that she's kind of in limbo right now. Kind of funny on Colossus' part, because he's had his sister in limbo, and now he has his girlfriend in limbo, so poor Colossus. Gotta love the guy, but he just always gets the breaks. I like how they're touching on this, and it's Will Portaccio who was touching on when she came back. Now he's touching on her consequences, but I feel like they've kind of dumped the whole uncontrollable power thing on Shadowcat when Rogue had it before, so I'm kind of on the fence with that, but overall I think it's good. Then it kind of goes to Hope's kind of content after talking to her grandmother, and then so they sent her to Vancouver. And then next we have she's about to jump, and then Hope catches onto her, and the kind of the Phoenix Force inside of Hope, which I hope they touch on later, because I'm not quite still kind of sure about that with the whole anything. And then kind of it ignites the full evolution of the Phoenix, or this girl's mutant powers, which is kind of cool. We don't really know what her mutant powers are at this point, which I hope they will in the new Generation Hope series launching in November. But she's flying, and she has a weird little body thing going on, so maybe it's kind of like an internal armor. Not really sure. Hopefully it touches on that a little more. And then it kind of says, Hope's kind of, I'm ready, so who's next? And so that means they're kind of going to the second light. Excited about that, and then they kind of have this rebuilding backup story, which kind of talks about Magneto, and it's kind of like a prelude to Avengers Second Children's Crusade. My words are all over the place today. Something I liked is how Magneto's like, maybe I'll go visit those kids and talk to them, and Cyclops is kind of like, maybe you should just back off and whatever. And then Wolverine comes in, who's kind of a bridge between the X-Men and the Avengers, and kind of like, we'll come after you, so watch it. And so maybe that's kind of something we'll see later in the Avengers Children's Crusade. I also liked how Magneto kind of ignores him and is like, whatever. And then there's this nice little picture up here of Wanda and Pietro, and then there's a picture of Wiccan and Speed. So it's kind of Magneto's kind of, maybe they are my grandkids. Something I also wasn't a big fan of in here was up here. Colossus is in a sling, but wasn't his arm reset back in X-Men Second Coming #2? Maybe this happens before that, but overall, I liked how there's a lot of seeds being planted for future stories. I liked the backup story, and I think that all the stories were handled well. And so Matt Fraction, I think, his writing is at his best here. So I'm going to go 5/26 with a 5 out of 5, I guess. It's a really good issue. Plants a lot of seeds. I'm looking forward to the rest of this arc, and there's a lot of questions left unanswered, and I want to see them answered, and I think we're going to. So 5 out of 5 Uncanny X-Men 5/26. Check it out.